Now imagine that map turning into a chain, each island a link, each link a fortress, and whoever controlled that chain has controlled the future of global power. In 1944, on a tiny volcanic island most people had never heard of, the fate of empires would be decided not in conference rooms, but in jungles, beaches, and caves soaked in blood. This is the story of how brutal island sieges during World War II gave birth to one of the most influential military strategies in modern history. The island chain strategy? It all began long before the Cold War on an island called Saipan. In 1951, American statesman John Foster Dulles formally articulated what became known as the island chain strategy. The idea was deceptively simple. Control a series of islands stretching from Japan. Through Taiwan and the Philippines down to Southeast Asia, you could contain any rising power in the Pacific without occupying its mainland. But this wasn't a theory born in a think tank. It was forged in war. Decades earlier, during World War II, the United States learned at an unimaginable cost that islands were no longer stepping stones. They were airfields. They were unsinkable aircraft carriers. They were the difference between reaching an enemy or being stopped cold in the ocean. And nowhere was that lesson learned more brutally than in the Pacific War. The war in Europe was about borders, cities, and armies. The war in the Pacific was about distance. Thousands of miles of open ocean. Tiny islands turned into concrete fortresses. Every advance paid for in lives. To defeat the Japanese Empire, the United States adopted a strategy known as island hopping, bypassing some strongholds, smashing others, and slowly clawing westward across the Pacific. The Gilbert Islands fell, then the Marshall Islands. Each victory brought American forces closer to Japan, but not close enough. To end the war, the United States needed something unprecedented, a base from which it could strike the Japanese home islands directly. That base lay in the Mariana Islands. In June 1944, the United States launched Operation Forager, the invasion of Saipan, Tinian, and Guam. At the heart of this operation was Saipan. For Japan, Saipan was sacred ground, was part of the empire's inner defensive ring, the last line before the homeland itself. For the United States, Saipan was the key to everything. Why? Because from Saipan's airfields, American B-29 superfortresses could finally reach Tokyo. Not raids, not symbolic attacks. Sustained industrial-scale bombing. If Saipan fell, Japan's war was effectively lost. Both sides knew it. On June 15, 1944, U.S. Marines stormed the beaches of Saipan. They were met with ferocious resistance. Japanese forces, commanded by General Yoshitsugu Saito, fought with the knowledge that retreat was impossible and surrender unthinkable. Every ridge became a kill zone, every cave a bunker, every inch of ground was contested. Saito launched relentless counterattacks, attempting to drive the Americans back into the sea. The fighting devolved into a brutal war of attrition, flamethrowers against cave networks, artillery pounding jungle hills, close-quarters combat that left no one untouched. It was one of the bloodiest battles the Marine Corps had ever faced. But slowly, inevitably, American firepower and logistics began to tell. The moment of no return came with the capture of a Slido airfield in southern Saipan. From that point on, Japan's defeat was only a matter of time. When Saipan fell, the shockwaves rippled all the way to Tokyo. The Japanese public lawn, shielded from the true state of the war, realized something terrifying. The enemy was no longer far away. Japan's inner defenses had been breached. The political impact was immediate and devastating. Prime Minister Hideki Tojo resigned, along with his entire cabinet. Within months, B-29 bombers were launching from the Marianas, turning Japanese cities into ashes and accelerating the path toward surrender. Saipan wasn't just a military defeat. It was a psychological collapse. For the sieges of the Pacific didn't just end a war, they rewrote the rules of global power. The United States emerged with a network of forward bases stretching across the Pacific bases that would later define Cold War strategy and modern geopolitics. What Dulles later called the island chain strategy was, in reality, the distilled lesson of Saipan and islands like it: control the seas, control the air, control the islands, and you control the balance of power. From World War II, to the Cold War, to the tensions of today, the echoes of those battles still shape our world. strategy was written in blood and steel, and its legacy still defines the grand chessboard of global power.